everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Superior Health Quality Alliance Roundtable conversation. My name is Kim Heft, and I am joined by my colleagues, Jerry Hineker, Yvonne Burston, as well as our returning guest speaker, Dr. Buffy. For those of you that have been joining these meetings for many months now, welcome back. If this is your first time to these calls, these webinars, we're so glad you're here. We host this session each week. The first part is a 30-minute educational session where we highlight important topics related to COVID-19 vaccinations, boosters, infection control, just all sorts of nursing home topics. So one thing though I'd like to ask of you is that if you have anything, you have this like burning desire to learn more about something that you're struggling with, trying to figure out, put that topic in chat. You can just directly put that to me, and then maybe we could have a session on that in the future. There is going to be a survey at the end of this webinar, which we'd ask you just to take a few minutes to complete. We really appreciate your feedback. And then Jerry's going to be putting a link for the PowerPoint presentation in chat momentarily. As far as chat goes, please use that chat box to share comments, questions, anything that pops into your mind during the presentation, and then we'll use that for discussion in our Q&A session. So with that, I'd like to welcome back Dr. Buffy. This is her fourth presentation of a 5-part series, and today's topic is lowering infections in the laundry and food service departments or areas. So with that being said, Dr. Buffy, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kim. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me back. It's such a pleasure to be able to come and provide education and training, and in the hopes that you are able to take that information back to your facility and implement some of these practices. So I'm super excited about today's topic. We are going to explore some easy to implement evidence-based practices within your laundry and food services. We're going to also evaluate some of the gaps in practices that I've observed in hundreds of facilities across the country. And then we're also going to explore we're going to review the regulatory requirements that are necessary for this department. So, I'm really excited about, I'm going to start my timer. I'm very excited about this topic because when I meet with infection preventionists, I will ask them, how often are you going into the laundry room or into the kitchen? And many times I'll hear, I don't, or very infrequently. And so I really want us to take a walk through these two different departments and encourage you to begin including these departments in your audits, whether that's monthly or quarterly. But it's really important that you, as the infection preventionist, have eyes on these departments and are not just leaving it up to the managers to make sure everything is completed the way that it needs to. And really, it's an interdisciplinary team that we really work together to ensure that the best infection prevention and control practices are being implemented. And so I love to engage with you. And as Kim mentioned, this call is so important for me to add value to you. And so in the chat, I would just love a simple yes or no of how many of you actually are frequently going into these departments and evaluating the infection prevention and control program. So you can just type yes or no, just so I can get an idea of who's involved in this area or not. So go ahead and enter that into chat. And that just helps, us again know, where we're coming from here. So let's start in the laundry room. And I just want to acknowledge that I see in the chat, there's a lot of you that are really not frequently so far coming in. And this is definitely my experience as well. So in the laundry and the food services, what I want you to always keep in mind is that in both of these departments, we want to have a clear and separate area for the soiled area, the soiled linen, and the clean linen. As well as the kitchen, we want to ensure there's a soiled separation from the soiled, dirty dish area from the clean food prep area. So that's something these two departments have in common. And most facilities that I go to do a really good job of making sure these are separate. Now, what I'm going to talk to you first about are some of the gaps that I see. So I really, really want you to take some of these action items back to your facility today. It's going to be super easy for you to evaluate these practices. So the first thing when I go into a laundry room, the first thing I'm looking for is to ensure there is that separate area from the dirty to the clean. And you can see here, I'm just going to roll back these pictures. You can see here that there is this separate area. Now, what I would like for you to do today or sometime this week is to go and see if in your soiled area or even clean, if you have a gown hanging up in your laundry room. If you have a gown hanging up, such as you see in this room, the next follow-up question that I would like for you to ask is, are you wearing this gown once and it's clean, or are you wearing it all day long as you're sorting the soiled linen? And this is very important. And what I will tell you is the majority of time, what I hear is they use the gown all day long. And so what's the problem with this scenario? The problem is that our laundry attendants could be potentially contaminating themselves throughout the day from the soiled linen. I mean, let's face it, the soiled linen has bodily fluids. I mean, everything that's going to is coming through the linen, right? I mean, this is where it's at. And we want our staff to be protected. And the best way to protect the staff are to have clean gown, gloves, and if necessary, eye protection. Now, of course, we always use clean gloves. We don't think about putting on the same pair of gloves. So why is it that we're thinking that it's okay that we put the same gown on all day long? And I want to just take you through this scenario one step further, in that if we put on a gown, we're sorting the soiled linen, we take it off, that's fine. But when we put it on again, we could be potentially contaminating our uniform. Okay, now let's say we're done with that. Our uniform is potentially contaminated, and then we're going to go and fold laundry. Well, we know that we have typically a table that we fold laundry on, but what happens if we're using our body to fold towels or sheets, which is very common? Then we may potentially be contaminating that clean linen as well. So I just want you to think about that a little further. It's a simple practice we can suggest to our staff to use the clean PPE just as we would on the floor. And if the response to this question is it's a clean gown, then what I like to recommend is actually putting a sign that says clean above the hanger so that everybody coming in or anybody working in there knows that we only have clean gowns that we're using. And this is going to help protect your healthcare worker and also reduce the risk of a contamination. The next thing I like to identify, and many of you will see in your laundry rooms, these big buckets of laundry detergent and bleach, and they're connected to these tubes. Well, these tubes are then connected to the washing machine. I don't know of really any facility, any long-term care facility at this point that's not using this type of system. So the question is, do you have a vendor that's coming into your facility and servicing this dispensing type of process every month? And this is the standard. This is typically what we want to see is every month. These tubes, they can get clogged, they can break. And so it's important that they're being evaluated by the vendor on a monthly basis. In addition, the vendor is going to ensure that your water temperature is calibrated to these detergents and bleach products. So for the best practice to reduce microorganisms is having a water temperature at 160 degrees. However, some buildings, they cannot reach that 160 degrees based on the infrastructure of the building or an old water heater. And this can be okay as long as you have a vendor that's then calibrating the detergents and the bleach to align with the water temperature that your machine does reach. What we don't want to hear is that when you are inquiring about this, is that the vendor only comes in if something's wrong, because then that means we're waiting for something to happen before they service it. And that's being reactive versus proactive. And we want to be proactive. And then, so that's the next practice I want you guys to be aware of. The third practice in the laundry is the microfiber mops or the mop heads. If you have microfiber mops that you're using on your floors, and microfiber towels, it is very important to ensure that you're following the manufacturer instructions for use, or the IFUs. Many facilities and actually corporate companies will have a policy not to put any of the microfiber mops or towels in the dryer. And there's a problem with this. And the reason that they have that policy is because it has historically, the microfiber mops have been able to create dryer fires. And so what we need to do is we need to ensure that our lint is being removed from the dryer. Best practice would be after every cycle or every hour, and have that checklist available to ensure that. But the microfiber mops, we want to follow the instructions that the manufacturer has created. And this is why. Well, first of all, it's a federal regulation that we always follow the manufacturer instructions. And secondly, the microfibers, they're such a great product. They can actually remove 93% of germs with water alone. Now, if they're not laundered the correct way, they can hold on to those microorganisms. And so it's really important that we're laundering these products the right way, so then we're not taking out potentially dirty or contaminated towels or mops to clean our environment. So it's just something to keep in mind. All right, so those are the main areas for laundry that I want you to keep an eye on. The gown, the vendor, making sure the water temperature is reaching that 160 degrees. If it's not, that the vendor is evaluating it. And the laundering of the microfiber mops and towels is in accordance with the manufacturer. You want to make sure you have a hand sink and hand soap and paper towels available. Surveyors will ensure that you have that, and that you're also wiping down the outside with a cleaning agent detergent of the washing machine every day. So those are just some of the practical tips that can assist you with laundry. We're going to spend the bulk of our time today in food services, as there is a lot to cover. So the first, as I mentioned in laundry, is we want to ensure that there is a clean and separate area from the dirty food to the stored clean area. Most facilities do a really great job with this, and then others, it's challenging because of the way their facility was built. And so then if you are not able to create that separate area, then having, like, when you're actually cleaning the dishes or running the dishwasher, not preparing food at the same time. So there are ways that you can work around that. The second is, it is a CMS regulation to ensure that the storing and the preparing and the distribution of food is under sanitary conditions. And this is really important to avoid those foodborne illnesses. We don't talk a lot about foodborne illnesses, especially with what we have so much time going on with COVID, but it's really important that we follow these practices to ensure that we reduce the risk of those. And so in the kitchen, we're looking for, and this is a CMS requirement as well, the guidance is we're looking to ensure that the equipment in the kitchen, such as the refrigerators, the food carts, the tray line equipment, all of that equipment is actually operating in a safe and organized condition that meets the manufacturer recommendations. And just as I mentioned with laundry, it's just as important in the kitchen to make sure that we're operating this equipment and per the manufacturer specifications. So how do we do that? How are we ensuring? Because if I came to your facility and said, are you actually operating them under the manufacturer expectations? You would probably say yes, but how do we show that? Well, we show that through different checklists and making sure that we're actually verifying that these equipment are actually operated accordingly. So the first is with the dishwashers. When we want to make sure that the dishwashers are operating at the standard that they need to, that they are actually destroying any microorganisms. For the kitchen as well as the laundry, we consider anything coming in, any dishes coming in, trays coming in, we're going to consider it as contaminated. In the laundry, it's the same. We consider all soiled linen as contaminated. So those areas are in common. But how can we say that everything is contaminated? We have to ensure that it's being treated in such a way. And so this is where we verify the practices. So first we look at the dishwasher. You're typically using the high temp dishwasher or the chemical sanitation. And we want to make sure that they're reaching the appropriate temperature of the 150 to the 165. And the final reach is that 180 degrees. The low temp dishwasher, which is also the chemical sanitation, will reach about 120 degrees, as well as the final rinse will rinse about that 50 parts per million of the hypochlorite chlorine. Now, again, we want to make sure then that we are actually verifying that the temperatures are reaching that high temp and that the chemical solution is actually being maintained at least once per shift. And this is how we're going to verify that it's working accordingly. State surveyors will come in and they'll actually have you run your dishwasher to verify that it's working. And it's important to make sure that you have those actual logs available to show them that you're up to date with that. What I like to see is that the logs are in the same area as the dishwasher because it's visually easy to remember to log it. If they're tucked away in a binder far away from that area, I often see gaps in the dates. And this is how we are verifying that we're actually that our equipment is working appropriately to reduce the risk of those foodborne illnesses. So we want to check and record those dishwasher temperatures at each service. Like I said, posting those logs in an area. You see here this picture. I'm on a clipboard. It's right in the same area. I like to have it where it's easily accessible. Try to avoid keeping those in a binder. I mean, if your facility does a great job with it and it's in a binder, don't change anything. But if you go in and you see, hey, there's gaps in there, then maybe perhaps consider moving it, and that might help reduce those gaps. I never would suggest you changing anything that's working, so just keep that in mind. Of course, we want to maintain these dishwashers at the manufacturer guidelines. This is also an area where your vendor will come in and service this equipment or service the dispensers. And so we want to make sure that they're coming in not only to laundry, but they're also coming into the kitchen. Many times you'll have the same vendor that's servicing both areas. The manual washing and sanitation, typically it's a 3-step process where you wash, you rinse, and you sanitize. Here's the different processes. It's very rare that I'm in a facility that doesn't do this appropriately. So this process is very hardwired in our facilities and in our kitchens, where they're using the step 1 of the hot water and detergent, then they're rinsing with the hot water, and then they're using that step 3 is typically a quat chemical solution that will actually sanitize those dishes. Sometimes if the dishwasher is down, then this is the process. And so it's a good system to verify that this is in effect and in process. It is possible, not everybody keeps a log of this, but I do recommend it because it helps to verify again that this process is working appropriately. So food storage, does your food storage look like this? I hope not, but how do you know? We've got to go in there and check, okay? So let me unwind a little bit and just start with the with the refrigerators. So this refrigerator is actually not in a kitchen. This is on the actual floor. So we want to check the resident refrigerators where there's food like nourishment being stored. If you have, you want to make sure it's not looking like this. So this is all about what not to look like. We want to make sure any nourishment for our residents is being labeled, dated, that refrigerator is locked, that there's a log on the outside of it that's being, that the actual temperature is being checked. You know, I bet there's some pretty interesting things growing in this kitchen. Can you imagine? So it's definitely, we want to avoid this. The next in the actual dining, or I'm sorry, in the actual kitchen, I want you to take a look at the actual walk-in coolers. So go in the walk-in coolers as well as the freezers. And what we don't want to see is what you see here on this picture is the food stacked all the way to the ceiling. We don't want that because first of all, it's against fire code. We want it to be that 18 inches below the ceiling, and that will ensure that's enough space for the sprinkler that's in there. We also don't want to see food stored on the ground. We don't want boxes on the ground. They can be stored on the black carts, but we don't want them on the floor. Another reason we don't want the food stacked all the way to the ceiling is because of this. It can begin to create condensation on the top of the ceiling, as you see here in this picture. The airflow is not moving it's not moving appropriately through and evenly distributed through the food. Your temperatures may be the same, so you may get the accurate temperatures, but the distribution of the cold air may not be moving appropriately if it's all stacked so tightly to the ceiling. So we want to avoid that. This is very common in the freezers, where the freezers are typically smaller. So just kind of something for you to take a look at there. In dry goods are usually really well organized. The kitchens have been built to really have a good system. We want to make sure it's the first in, first out system. You'll typically see the cans in a row. They're labeled. And you see here some of these cans are dented. We want to make sure if cans are dented, these are okay, actually. This couple of them might be sent back, but there's actually, there's several posters that your food distribution, your vendor should have for you. I think Cisco has a poster that actually shows what type of dented can, the level of that denting should be sent back to avoid any type of botulism, that bacteria that creates botulism. We want to make sure that we're removing those cans. So let's talk about my biggest pet peeve, which is ice machines. Okay. So first of all, it is my greatest wish in the world, if you have the budget, if you're getting rid of your manual ice machines, please consider getting an automatic ice machine automatic ice machine versus the ones that are manual with the scoopers. Of course, you know, we don't always have that ability, but the contaminated ice can be responsible for these different bacteria. Enterobacter, Pseudomonas, Cryptosporidium, Legionella. It really can, it is a high risk if they're not cleaned and sanitized on a scheduled basis. Per CMS, we want to make sure that we have appropriate practices to prevent the contamination and the possible the opportunity for these waterborne illnesses. We want to make sure the ice machine is clean and sanitary, and that we are preventing any type of contamination of ice. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So here's some tips on the ice machines for these manual ice machines. We do not want to handle the ice directly by hand and we want to make sure we're washing hands before obtaining the ice. We want to make sure that we have an actual designated surface for the ice scoop to dispense the ice. You can keep that on a short chain or, you know, on a clean surface. You just want to make sure that it's not in the ice machine itself. And then ensure that the ice scooper is washed daily. I recommend running it through the dishwasher daily And if you have that container that it's in, like you see the one in this picture, that blue container that it's sitting in, I like running that through the dishwasher daily as well. So that's going to help really make sure that's being sanitized. So some of the contamination risks associated with the ice machine can be if staff do not use proper hand hygiene, they fail to wash their hands, they use bare hands. I don't typically see that, but are we actually washing our hands before we're getting the ice? Unclean equipment, some of those scoopers, they're not being run through the dishwasher. And then also some of the internal components of the ice machine, maybe the tubing is not draining well, it's not sanitized, it's not actually being cleaned on a scheduled basis. Several years ago, when I came on site to facilities, I would bring this biological indicator, and it picked up the parts per million of basically any type of bacteria on a surface. And I found that the ice machines were the dirtiest surfaces in the entire building. They actually were dirtier than the toilets were, just because of the infrequent cleaning of them. And so we definitely want to make that a priority, that we're cleaning those ice machines. So we want to follow the manufacturer instructions for use. You're definitely going to hear me say that a lot with all of the equipment. We want to ensure we're using EPA registered disinfectants that are suitable for the ice machines. We want to follow those instructions. We want to flush and clean the ice machine and dispensers on a scheduled basis. And if possible, conduct microbiologic sampling of the ice chest and ice making machines on a scheduled basis. So this is another opportunity for you to check with your maintenance. It's typically maintenance who are responsible for the cleaning of the ice machines. Ask them what their schedule is. Are we cleaning it monthly, quarterly, every 6 months? How is that process being completed? How do you know if it's being completed? I'm a big advocate of checklists, so I like having a checklist in a paper, in a clear cover right there posted on the ice machine, so that the staff can see exactly when it was last emptied and sanitized. You can see here that this is just an example. I mean, this is mold growing on the inside of this machine. So this is just an example of, we can't see what's inside. And so this is why we have to have a schedule of cleaning, so that we are making sure that we're removing any type of bacteria or pathogen. The coolers themselves, you will see these. This is typically what we see on the floor for our staff. Again, really making sure hand hygiene is occurring, because this scooper is quite small, you can see. So if you're opening it up, you're putting your hand in there. I mean, if you haven't done hand hygiene, your hands, your dirty, contaminated hands are potentially contaminating that ice as well. And then we want to make sure that this is all being ran through the dishwasher. It's being cleaned and sanitized every single day. I want to give a shout out. This is a group of laundry and food service staff that I worked with one day, and just their dedication was remarkable. They were so excited to take a picture with me and celebrate their hard work. I would ask that you really take the time to celebrate your laundry attendants, your food workers, as they're often not recognized for their hard work, and definitely digging in and doing a lot of work that is very difficult. So giving a shout out to them. So we talked through some of these processes. A couple other areas, I just want to see if, a couple other areas that I want to mention in the kitchen before we wrap up for today is, we didn't talk about ensuring that your food carts are also cleaned and sanitized after every single meal service. They should be coming in through the dirty area. We want to ensure that they are, you can just open them up and see if they're being cleaned, and you can talk to the staff on the floor too. They'll let you know. They'll tell you, no, the food carts are sticky. They're not being cleaned. So we want to verify that those food carts are being cleaned. We also want to ensure there's a lot of temperatures that are taken in the kitchen all day long. So we want to make sure that the food that's being prepared, that the temperatures are being logged for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We want to ensure that the temperatures for the coolers, the walk-in coolers, as well as the freezers, that there is a temperature log of those as well. These are really important aspects. And if you're in your survey window, they're really easy to get tags on. If we don't verify that the surveys are actually being completed, or that the temperature logs aren't completed, it's a real easy tag. So we want to just verify that the logs are being updated regularly, every single day, that there's not gaps in those logs. So those are the areas that I have for laundry and food service. I hope that it was helpful for you. I encourage you to go in and get to know your staff that are in the laundry, that are in food service, as they really want you. I want you to work closely with them as well. And, really have that great communication and making sure all of those processes are in place. I want to remind you of my book, Broken. This is a book that is really dedicated to you as healthcare workers. Encourage you to share this book. It is written, describes infection control practices before the pandemic, what occurred during, and our solutions as we move forward. There are interviews from administrators and IPs, and it really is a story that is dedicated to your work and showcases how valuable you are, and really what we can do as an industry to move forward and to heal and to really practice the best care that we can. If you need additional questions, feel free to reach out to us at IPC Well. We are happy to answer any questions that you have. We love working with long-term care. That is our specialty, and we're here for you. And then, so that concludes my time. I'm going to turn it over for any questions, and I look forward to having more dialogue with you and seeing where you guys are at within your laundry and food practices.
So that was a really great presentation, Dr. Buffy. Really appreciate it. It was one thing that I have to add to it. One of the tools that was recommended, I mean, it sounds simple as heck, but was when you're going into laundry service, when you're going into the food service, I'm the infection preventionist, maybe the administrator, whatever, bring a flashlight. You'd be surprised what you can't see without the flashlight. I know it just sounds crazy, but so many things were missed due to not actually having a flashlight.
Yeah, definitely getting into those places that we don't always check out. So it's great.
So what other questions does our participants have for Dr. Buffy? I know that I've been in long-term care for 20 some years, and I have had our share of infection control issues in the kitchen. That's the first place they stop when they come in the building, and they run with whatever whatever a surveyor finds from there. So yeah, what questions do you have for Dr. Buffy? Maybe there's a you're looking for a good intervention for a recent tag you may have gotten in an area, or maybe you have a great intervention you want to share with a tag or an issue that you had.
I'll just add a couple more things to that too. And thank you, Tracy, for your comment. I appreciate that. I was in a facility a week ago where their kitchen staff were wearing eye protection. And just so you know, this is not required for them so based on community transmission of substantial to high, the CDC recommendation is to wear eye protection when providing resident care. And I was in this kitchen where all the staff were wearing eye protection. I actually talked to one of my colleagues at the CDC, and she was like, no, we don't have to do that. So it's really just wearing the eye protection when we're around the residents. So that just may be a simple solution that can help your staff if that is your policy right now. That's not necessary. And, that hopefully maybe can reduce some burden for them. Another quick thing that I didn't mention is simple is just making sure you have easy access to hair nets when you're walking into the kitchen. Having them outside of the kitchen is important, not, again, inside where you have to walk through the kitchen to get it. So most facilities do a great job with this, but again, there can be some that I go to that don't have that hairnet. So just another couple of tips there for you.
Those are good tips.
So for those of you that mentioned that you do go into the kitchen and laundry, I'm curious if you can identify with some of the things that I spoke about today that, are you seeing similar things in your laundry or your kitchen? I'm just curious for those that responded that they do go into these areas, if this is your experience, or if you have a completely different experience within your facility.
I know sometimes it takes a minute to type in chats, but please feel free to just unmute, say a few words. I think Tracy just made another comment in regards to tune-ups. I like that. I like those words. Tune-ups are usually needed. I think ongoing education and training is also needed.
Yeah, I agree. And so in the theme of tune-ups, when I think about, that's why I mentioned a lot of the having checklists, and we want to make sure that what the protocols are actually being implemented. And so, for example, I didn't mention, but like really involving maintenance, maintenance is very important in the role of laundry and the food service. So maintenance will have the schedule for cleaning the ice machine. They'll have a schedule for cleaning the vents on the ceiling, any exhaust fans, the hoods, the oven hoods. They'll have all of that on a schedule. And so you want to, check with them and find out what those schedules are. And I encourage you to actually put eyes on that schedule, not, yeah, we do it every 6 months or we do it every quarter. Like look at the actual schedule or the checklist to make sure it's being done. Verification is, I find, very, very important to making sure that these practices are being completed as well. Mm-hmm. And I think, and sorry if I'm talking too much, but in these areas, they're unique in that the checklists and the logs are required and the surveyors look for them, whereas hand hygiene, PPE, and even some of the housekeeping, you're not going to have a surveyor look for a checklist or look for that necessarily to verify that's happening. So in a sense, it's almost easier to implement than some of our other IPC practices, because we are required to have those checklists. So just something, just maybe that helps too, is just, it's because of that requirement. I think it almost makes these roles easier to implement, these departments.
I was just thinking about infection prevention and water pass. And I don't know who does a water pass in your buildings. Maybe it's the nursing assistants. Is it the nurse? Is it food service? Could be the activities department, and they're passing it, maybe in the morning, afternoon, and night. Are they disposable mugs or cups, or do they need to be washed? And I reach out to all of you to watch a water pass observation. This is, you think, yeah, I washed my hands and I filled up the ice, and you're looking at this is great. They go put that mug in the room, and it's fine if they just put it in the room, set it down, and left. It didn't touch anything. But then that Nancy needed her hairbrush, and you pulled it out of the drawer, and she said, can you get that spot right here? Yep, no problem, Nancy, got that for you. And then you go right back and you don't do any hand hygiene, and you just go to the next person. I just encourage you all to watch a water pass. It'll be amazing on what you find. That's just personal experience.
I love that, Kim. Observations are really essential to all of the IPC practices. That's where we really see what's going on. We can have the best policies ever written, but where we really learn what is occurring in our IPC practices in our program is when we do those observations. I really can't stress that enough, how critical that is, even if it's just a few minutes a day, but going out and seeing what's actually occurring is going to really tell the story.
Hello, this is Kevin Larson. I have a question or seeking more information on what is required if you're in outbreak status with COVID. What is required for your dishwashing? Should you be using disposal dishes and glasses, silverware, all that? And is it just for those individuals that are testing positive? Or is it recommended that you go facility-wide during an outbreak and use disposals at that time? Any feedback on that?
Well, Kevin, that's a very, very good question, and thank you for bringing that up. So, and it'll really tie into today's presentation of, the answer is no, you don't have to use disposable when as we talked about, all dishes are considered contaminated. And that's why we need to make sure all of these systems are in place, that the hot water dishwasher or the chemical low temp is working, that that everything is that the carts are being cleaned and sanitized. If those processes are in place and working, then we can truly consider everything is contaminated and you don't have to go to disposable. Now, with that said, if you're not confident in your process or your staff's ability, or I shouldn't say ability, your staff's follow through with ensuring that everything is contaminated, then if you can certainly use disposable, but it's not required. And so you really have to assess the risk that is going to occur based on your practice. So it is not required. And same for laundry, actually. If we truly are considering everything as contaminated, it's not required to treat the linen any differently than any other linen. But that's why I'm so passionate about making sure we have clean PPE, that we're verifying that the vendors are servicing the equipment, that we're verifying that that the water temperature is at least the minimum, reaching the minimum requirement, and the vendor will check that, making sure the dryer temperature is working. And so again, if you're not confident in those processes, then maybe your facility having a yellow bag for those on isolation is better, So again, that's not required, but if it's helping your building and helping to ensure that you're reducing the risk, then you certainly can do that. I would just, especially with food service, we really start, if your building's been an outbreak a long time, we have to start understanding other consequences of using paper products for meals. That can definitely affect the residents in other ways. for their, just because, I mean, no, who wants to eat on plastic all the time, right? So that, but you have to consider that as well. But great question. Great question.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yvonne, do you have any questions for our participants today?
I do. Thank you so much, Dr. Buffy. Now, I looked at Dr. Buffy's presentation, and she had some things that were really interesting. And so I was wondering if you all don't mind sharing who within your facility is responsible for the separation between the clean and dirty areas? Is there a specific person that does that? And you can unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. Anyone at all?
Yvonne, clarify if you would, please. What do you mean by the person responsible for keeping its clean and dirty separate? I mean, for us, we try to use engineering controls wherever possible, but maybe other facilities are different. So for example, for laundry, there's the door in that's dirty and the door out that's clean. But is there other systems out there that I'm not aware of?
So like in some of the nursing homes, you'll see the dirty dishes in a clean area. So who is there someone that's going behind checking, making sure that the dishes are where the dirty dishes should go? I've even seen on the carts, there'll be carts that's still being passed, and someone will come back and put a dirty cart on the cart. And so is that like a manager that's on the floor, that's monitoring that, the staff, department supervisor is what Elizabeth has put in?
Yvonne, I see where you're going with that now, because yes, I've experienced the same things where the trays, it's gone. I took a tray out and they're like, I don't know where to put this. It's gone now. So they just put it anywhere. But there isn't a particular person that is following up. I know it's everybody's responsibility, right? It is. It's everybody's responsibility, but that's a hard culture change for sure. I've struggled with that before.
Sorry, Kim, for interrupting. I see another person is saying the department manager or supervisor. So then just to further that question, because I've seen so many times that yes, it's the supervisor's responsibility, but that tray ends up in a clean area all night long. So is it any place where they're actually stating or checking off that they've checked the areas for dirty linen? Because we all know, I mean, not dirty linen, but yeah, dirty linen or carts or anything, because we all know a lot of times the state comes in early in the morning and the first thing they will do is go in and look and find dirty dishes, dirty linen, and a clean area. So do you all have some place that they're checking off saying, yes, we've checked for this last night? Sorry, I'm reading the comments.
Here we go. A lot of department managers and supervisors. It's a nursing, Stacy says, if it's a nursing staff, nursing supervisor, if it's dietary staff, the dietary supervisor. Oh, and
one thing I'll just add to that is, as we're talking about soiled linen and even surveyors, is, ensuring that the soiled linen is contained, that it's bagged, that it's tied. If it's heavily soiled, double bagging it. You don't want to leave it on the floor. Many times I'll go in facilities and there's soiled linen on the floor in the hallway, We want to make sure it's in a barrel, in a receptacle, it's covered. When it's being transported to the linen area, that it's covered. We don't want it overflowing in these big bins. Facilities will get tagged for that. And sometimes that's, like I was in a building that has the big bin, and they pick up laundry once a day. So it's like all overflowing, and they may need to do a couple schedules, instead of just having it overflowing like that. So we want to reduce the risk of any cross contamination. And so if that's our thinking, then that will help us to making those decisions, keeping it contained, keeping it separate from the clean, all of that. So hopefully that's helpful. In some laundry rooms, very seldom, and I agree with what Kevin was saying, it's more the engineering controls. Most buildings are set up to where the soiled linen is separate. There's a separate room from the clean. Same for the kitchen. However, some buildings are not, and they're literally in the same. So I was even in a building recently where the soiled and the clean was the exact same room. And so what I suggested was, creating that themselves. So having all of the soiled and dirty linen on one side of the room, and then, then on the side of the washers and dryers, have that as the clean area. And so being very deliberate about that as well. So
I see here that Stacy says that they have some residents who routinely throw their soiled linen on the floor. So they've had that care planned, and then the staff knows to go in and monitor and pick up frequently, which is smart to have a care plan.
sure. It sounds like that's what the resident wants. That's interesting. If I'm reading that the right way. Okay.
Yeah, I've had a residents before that have maybe been cognitively impaired, and as much as you try to frequently do toileting or what have you, it's just sometimes doesn't happen. So it might end up on the floor. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I agree with the care planning, for any practices that are contrary to what our best practices or regulations, care planning it, documenting it. This will help ensure that you've provided the education, show them the education, and that will keep your facility in the good light. So I just want to look at there was a comment about fans in
Yeah,
laundry.
I did see that. I saw that too.
Right.
And the question looks like from Elizabeth, fan use in laundry room, is that okay? Not in the soiled linen sorting room, but yeah, it gets really hot in that laundry room. And I remember fans going too. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we really want to avoid fans in high risk areas where, like where there's airborne precautions in place. I would not have them in the soiled linen room. Again, this can be tricky if it's one area, but the clean area should be fine. I don't know of any problem with that. I've been in buildings that don't even have air conditioning, or the airflow through the laundry room, so that's their only source of cool air. Again, assessing your facility, and the challenge to me is more if you don't have that separate area from the soil to the clean. So then that may become a little bit more of a challenge. But good question. We want to, the fans are a tricky topic, because some of our buildings are so old and they don't have central air, and so especially like if you're on even COVID units, and of course, we want to avoid any of the fans in those high risk areas. But that's a tricky situation sometimes, because again, there could be unintentional consequences without that airflow as well. So my recommendation in that type of situation is work with your maintenance, your engineer, to see what you can do for appropriate airflow that's not going to potentially create harm within your facility.
Dr. Buffy, just going back to this question again, I'm going a little further with the possibility of a resident or two that may put dirty things on the floor. And we know we're always taught not to put anything on the floor. So just going one step further, yes, the staff come and let's say pick up a brief that may have been thrown on the floor by the resident. Would you recommend there being actually maybe, that could be a fall hazard too? Because at first I was going to say like a barrier next to them, but then that resident, if they're able to get up, could fall. Or do you recommend that even one step further would be pick it up and then clean the area or spray the area on the floor, anything of that nature?
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like it's soiled linen that is on the floor. I mean, you know, I need to kind of learn a little bit more about this resident and to kind of explore. I would definitely explore different methods or ways to try to adhere to, you know, the best practices. Having a private room obviously is better. So perhaps it's not creating harm for a roommate. You know, having the aides check in frequently. You know, we just the risk is just you know, for other healthcare workers coming in. I'm sensitive to, like, there's a time situation too. We can't be going in constantly and then, you know, picking up and then cleaning and all that stuff too. So these are our scenarios in long-term care that we have to be creative with all the time. And so maybe there's a fun basket that can be created that could, you know, that the resident would be okay with having, like a laundry receptacle that they would be open to. I mean, you know, you just really have to keep trying to get creative to see how that would support, you know, that resident, as well as support a clean environment as well.
Especially if just thinking about that situation, if it's a resident with dementia that has that visual spatial type of disorder where they're seeing a hole, they're thinking because of the floor, they're thinking there's a hole there and they're throwing their things there and there's not actually one there. Maybe something could be put in that spot that's dark that they're seeing as a hole that they can actually put it in. So I see what Dr. Buffy is saying. You would have to know more about that resident to be able to say for sure.
Cool. But you know, that's what I love about it's like it's our strength and our weakness. You know, we have, it's so unique, you know, in all of these opportunities, but that's our challenge too. You know, so I meet the most creative people in the world in long-term care because we have to come up with these solutions, and it really does take all of us as a team, you know, to come up with these great solutions. And so I appreciate that about all of you who are participating, and, you know, because it's just it is a challenge at times, and, you know, we have to come up with these creative solutions for sure.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Buffy. We're coming up on the hour. We have a couple minutes left. I think Jerry's good. Yep. Hey, look at that. Jerry just put our survey in there. If you could please complete this survey, we would really appreciate it. Dr. Buffy, I know you're controlling the slide deck today. Could you see if there's one more slide after this? Oh, wait, go back one more. Thank you. Thanks so much. Wait, one more. There. Perfect. Okay. Yes, I just wanted everybody to know that our upcoming sessions, we have a 3-part immunization series, the 24th, 31st, and the 7th. And then we're going to have Dr. Buffy again for her last infection prevention session. So with that being said, everybody, I really enjoyed this conversation, and this topic was just wonderful. Thank you again, Dr. Buffy, and thank you all the participants for your comments, your questions. It was an engaging conversation, and I learned a lot, and I'm sure probably all of you did too. So have a great afternoon, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you.